We're live. Awesome. Okay. Hey guys. It's me, Neil Bogenrieder. It's time for the Bogenrieder Variety Hour. So, real quick, just as a reminder, this is the first podcast that we've ever done that isn't just Marvel books. I'm trying to expand my audience beyond that, and hopefully introduce you to some genuinely good titles. So we're gonna start things slow this week. We're only doing two, and one of them's a paperback. But there was a book that I wanted to do last time that I never got the chance to do because the release time was off. But hopefully, with this next release thing, we should have an issue out relatively soon. By the time, relatively close to when I plan on doing the next stream. So to begin, we're going to be looking at, I believe, 8 books. I don't think it's the biggest we've ever done, but it's one of the biggest. So, real quick, here's stream. So we're talking about 2 issues of Amazing Spider-Man. I only have this one for visual. ASM 59 and 60. Sword number 3. Iron Man number 6. Guardians of the Galaxy number 11. X-Men number 18. Radiant Black number 1. And Once in Future Volume 1 by Kieran Gillen and Dan Moore. And I've been wanting to talk about this book for a while now. This is just me finally getting around to doing it. I'm not going to go into too much detail with this book or the 2 Amazing Spider-Man issues or Sword, because I've already done those books before on other shows. So I'm not going to go into like plot details, but I will be talking about, what I liked about them, what I wasn't too keen on. And I got my Gatorade. So, good times. Also a thing of water somewhere. It's not that. I know that it's not that one. Oh, it's over there on the side of my bed. Also, new setup. My bookshelf is over here. And my draft table is over here. So the bed is no longer in the background. It's only over here. You can see it on the periphery of the camera. But it's much further away than it used. It's way more out of the picture than it used to be. So in my view, that's a total victory. So we'll start with Amazing Spider-Man, and that's because that's those 2 issues are the ones that I've gone into the most detail about on other platforms, namely Spidey Dude and Spider-Man Crawl Space Satellites. Not ASM, but Sword. So I kind of I've had time to think about ASM 59, and I gotta be honest, it wasn't a story arc that I particularly liked. It wasn't as bad as 2099, and 2099 wasn't even that bad. But this is gonna be one of those arcs that kind of fades into the forgettable storyline sort of deal. And that's kind of disappointing because I think that it's got some good stuff in there. It wraps up the Mr. Negative story. I don't remember if we've talked about ASM 58, but for the sake of saving time, I wanted to make sure that we got through the most recent stuff. So we're skipping... If we didn't do 58, we're skipping it. So, ASM 59 has the unfortunate problem of having a rough art team. And Spencer's had, Chris Bachalo, who I'm not a huge fan of, but he's generally had a rock-solid art team. Unfortunately, Marcelo Ferreira is one of my least favorites in Marvel's current staple, so that makes it really hard to say that I liked it. What I will say is that it's mostly the colorist, and if I recall, I need to find the colorist real quick. Hang on. We're going digging, boys. Okay. So there's a lot of stuff coming up. Is the colorist here? No. It is Hollowell. And I gotta say, his coloring is rough. Like, it's not as bad as, like, David Curiel. But, like, going off of the preview pages, it's not... I apologize for anyone who's listening to this in, like, as background audio. And this is audio form, but I'm using visual aids. But the coloring is really weird. It kind of bleeds all over the place. It feels really stilted. So, the art's the weakest part of this book. Now, the story, I think, has a lot more to it. Mr. Negative is finally back, but, it's kind of an anticlimactic fight scene where Martin Lee kind of just gives himself up. It does lead to one of the better character moments of Martin Lee, and it also leads to a very strong moment between Aunt May and Peter. And it's the most Aunt May has done since, I believe, ASM 29, or the Feminist Syndicate arc, which was ASM 26 to 28. So it's not as if this didn't have anything to offer. I just feel like this was a much slower of a burn, especially after Last Remains, where we needed some resolution fast. I'd honestly give 59 like a B minus. It's kind of there. ASM 60 is what we should have gotten like immediately after the arc ends. For whatever reason, Peter just MJ shoves a fucking bagel down Peter's throat. But this issue definitely helped alleviate a lot of the problems I had with the post Last Remains arc. I felt like it kind of took its time a little too slowly with Postmortem. This felt like it was diving right into the psychology of Kindred, why Peter is having so much stress, and it finally brought MJ back into the book. Now, she's kind of been back and, like, they haven't really been together, but this is Spencer saying, like, I'm in this for the long haul. MJ's back in New York. I'm hoping she spends more time in the book, but it's good to know that she's gonna be a presence again, because she spent so much time in her own solo book or in limbo because her book got canceled because of the pandemic. I don't know if Twitch is still censoring about that. I don't know if we're allowed to talk about that anymore, but So I did mention that there is spoilers in this podcast, and the big one is that Doctor Strange, he's back in the book again, I guess. He confronts Mephisto about what's wrong with Peter Parker's soul. And for those of you who are One More Day haters like me, that's a big deal. Because that's essentially Spencer saying, yeah, I'm pulling the trigger on One More Day, Marvel editorial, what are you going to do about it? And that's a fairly big deal. Considering that One More Day, along with, like, Sin's Past, is kind of the black horse of... Or not the black horse, the black sheep of Spider-Man stories that Marvel seems completely afraid to touch on. And, I'm really glad that we're, getting the time to focus on it. Where is my... I just realized that I don't have my, little bar at the bottom. Ruh-roh. There we go. Okay. Woo! Alright. So, that's fixed. Thank God. What did I fix this time? I'm going to cover my name real quick. You all know my name, but it's for, account privacy. But yeah, this issue felt like a very good send-off to Last Remains, and I'm honestly, unironically looking forward to what's coming next. Like, we have the Boomerang. I have it in here. I have it in my notebook, actually. A visual aid, and I'm gonna put myself on the main camera screen real quick. This is a visual aid I drew up with every single plot point that's in Amazing Spider-Man right now. I haven't added in the Mephisto bit, but like this hemisphere of plot points is gonna probably be resolved in the next 6 issues. So I'm glad that Spencer's kind of taking a wide brush to it. It's good work. I'm looking forward to seeing Pat Gleason again. I'm looking forward to seeing the new suit. They actually just recently released the cover for ASM 62. I'm glad to see Gleason doing the costume, and he's getting rid of the weird Funko Pop eyes. I hate those, and that was one of the biggest problems with the costume. I have friends who say that they really like it, and good on them. I mean, I'm not one to judge. But, it's really good to have a solid art team, especially because Pat Gleason is one of the reasons why Superman Rebirth was so successful, in my opinion. I don't know where I went with that plot point, but or where I went with that tangent. I'm not a big fan of ASM getting like a giant size, kind of deal. I feel like that's just kind of leaning too hard on like the number ones. But I guess this kind of confirms that this is Peter in the suit and not Boomerang. I might pull up like a visual aid, but I don't know why the cover hasn't been shown yet. That's weird. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing where this plot line, where these plot lines go, and seeing how many of them we can take out in one arc. As for when Peter will propose to MJ, I'm thinking like soon. Not necessarily in the next 5 months. Maybe before 2021 is over. Like ASM 75, for that sweet milestone cash money. But yeah, ASM is right back on track. I had my doubts for a solid moment, but I'm feeling it again. Congratulations, Spencer. You got me right back into it. And assuming everything goes as planned, he's got me booked in for the next 6 months. Or not for the next 6 months, but the next 3. Up until at least May of 2021, he's got my cash. Good work, Spencer. You're doing good work at Marvel. So let's skip ahead to Sword number 3. Written by Al Ewing, art by... Oh, one more thing. Bagley is hit and miss with ASM 62. Once again, I think I mentioned this on the last show. Bagley has the problem of being given a weird inker. I believe this is Andrew Hennessy. John Dell, if you read Superior Spider-Man, he's the guy who inked Cameron Culley's work up until, I believe, ASM number 1 of the 2015 run. And at that point, I think Wade Von Grawbadger took over. But Andrew Hennessy is clearly the superior inker, and I can tell it's him because it's the pages where the lines aren't weird and out of and not complete. So yeah, I understand it's like a technical thing, but I'm that kind of guy. I nitpick about inks. So let's talk about Sword. Al Ewing, Valerio Schiti. This one I had a lot of concern about because, like, a couple weeks before this issue launched, they said, oh, we're going to have 4 artists on this book. Bernard Chang, Ray Anthony Height, Nico Leon, who I've found very hit or miss, especially since Agents of Atlas, and Valerio Schiti, the main artist. It mainly focuses on Manifold as he goes around the universe looking for help against the King in Black. AKA Swedish word for fuck. It's good to see Manifold being put in the spotlight again, especially since it's not Hickman, because, Hickman has his pet characters, and Manifold is kind of one of them. But it was nice to see Manifold in the spotlight, and getting a chance to do something. I mentioned this on the Satellites podcast, but it's important to note here, and I know, I'm sorry, Douglas, please don't beat me, but Ewing has, like, this kind of mini Marvel universe within the wider Marvel universe. And it's interesting to see, like, all the plot points from X-Men kind of cross over with his plot points from Guardians of the Galaxy and Immortal Hulk. Because in this issue, we see Manifold appealing to Lizard Man, who is currently leading the Snark War over, which is a power pack thing, but currently it's taking place over in Guardians of the Galaxy. Meanwhile, he's also dealing with the Orcus plotline from X-Men, while also dealing with Gyrick and Alpha Flight from Immortal Hulk. And if you hear Orcus and Gyrick, you probably know how those 2 plot points intersect. Basically, Alpha Flight under Gyrick is working for Orcus. So it's I love how Ewing kind of has, like, his own lived-in Marvel universe. It's a very good way of showing how lived in it is. One sec. Oh, everyone's live. So, I'm giving this one an A-. I think I gave it an A on Satellites. Something I need to note is that, like, you can tell when the artist... It's actually very hard to tell when the artist changes. Marte Gracia does a great job of disguising the line work. So the only noticeable pages is when it's like in a flat texture, but when it goes to the space stuff, that's when Gracia shines and able to hide who's doing what. And I love it when it's able to do stuff like that. So, I want to talk about Black Cat because I didn't really get to talk about Black Cat on the Satellites podcast, but we'll talk about that a little bit, after this. I'm going to deviate from the original flight path. We're going to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy first, mainly because I don't have a whole lot to say about this issue. Mainly because I think it's maybe the weakest of Ewing's books. And that's not to say it's a bad book, but it's more like a B- kind of deal. It's like on the ASM 59, like where previous issues of Guardians have been like A's, and ASM 60 was an A. 59 was a B-, and this was kind of a B- too. On a technical level, there is nothing wrong with like the art. This is very solid paneling and composition by Guan Cabal, and Ewing has the characters down pat. This is actually this book is almost synonymous with the problems in Spencer's ASM during the post-mortem arc. One second, I'm gonna take a swig from my orange swill. Yeah. I'm not a Gatorade-holic, I promise. Okay. But Ewing's Guardians is kind of synonymous with the problems that Spencer's having over an Amazing Spider-Man. It just feels like he's got the characters down completely perfectly. It just feels like the plot kind of slowed to a crawl here, and they kind of just stood around saying nothing while, gods came down from above and threatened to destroy everything. I'm sure we'll get a good resolution in issue 12, and I'm kind of looking forward to seeing. I'm actually looking forward to seeing the new lineup and how it's like completely expanded. I do wish Beta Ray Bill was on that team. He's one of my favorite characters. Hint, hint, Marvel. I'm buying his mini. So I'll be glad to see how that turns out. So real quick, I want to talk about Black Cat. I'd argue that aside from some weird coloring and lettering issues, this book is probably one of the best on the stands right now. Jed MacKay has Felicia's character down perfectly. And she fits right into the King in Black tie-in. It's great to see her like in and out of her element. There's a great page where to point out, this is like a magic entity that's asking her to take over her body so they can wreck shit. But this page is there's probably a page in here that's the horniest page Marvel has posted outside of the X-Men, and I'm fine with that. It shows all of her past lives. If I can find it on Discord real quick, I'm gonna find, because I sent it to some of my friends. Here we go. I found it. Okay, so it's this page, and it's actually a fairly comprehensive look at her long-term love interests. So you've got Daredevil, Batroc, Odessa Drake from the Thieves Guild stuff. And then you've got Flash Thompson. I'm pretty sure that's Puma, and then this. So MacKay did a really deep dive, and it's a flame from the Black Cat from the Spec Annual number 4, who recently reappeared in the Black Cat number 10 as one of the Black Fox's students, who she was in I think it was more implied, but I think at this point we can confirm that they were in a relationship because they held hands and shit. If characters hold hands, they're in a relationship. That's the canon. Then you got Spider-Man over here stroking her leg. The only characters that don't complete the set are Silk on the other leg and Scott Lang in the background. If you read Zeb Wells's if you read Zeb Wells's Ant-Man last spring, and then maybe a Luke Cage because he casually mentioned that he had Black Cat on his couch, but we're not digging too deep into that. But I love this page. It's just like and then the follow-up is great because it expands on Felicia's character, showing how she doesn't like to be emotionally manipulated, and it's just great character work out of MacKay. like I said, my problems aren't with the line art and the writing. Those things are great. The main issues I had were with the coloring and with the lettering. So if you look at this panel right here, the lettering is really thick and really wide. It when you look at a book like Amazing Spider-Man, we'll use ASM as a comparison, and then later we'll use Sword. ASM is really good about having very compact, tight lettering that allows for more dialogue to be placed. And when they try to do that with Black Cat pages, there are so many little like jutting out bits. This is standard standard typography, by the way. There's so many weird like little jutting bits. If I can zoom in further, I will. Hang on. Okay. Come on, Firefox. There we go. Okay. So in this particular panel, or in this particular part, look at all like the little jutting out bits, like that. Those two little things on the E, those little like dashes on the H, the little jutting out part on the S right there. And then the bolding the bolding reveals more on like the R's and the S. Those S's become those little juts on the S become more pronounced, and the spacing is really weird too. The kerning on letters, particularly like D and R to E, is really weird because the rest of it is really tight, so you don't recognize a lot of the technical problems. I'm gonna reset it back to normal, but I do need to point that out, that like this stuff begins to compound as time goes on, and the coloring is not as bad. I know I'm using like the horny page for visual reference. It's a good page. I'm gonna keep using it, but like the coloring is really fucking weird in like this panel where it's like this really light shade of skin of like, you know, Caucasian skin color. But then there's no really good shift over to, you know, the shadow where her face is right here. It's almost like too lifelike, if that makes sense. Like there's not. It's trying to be like lifelike coloring on a stylized, you know, Marvel house style, whereas where DC tries to be like, you know, Phil Jimenez, where he's incredibly lifelike in his interpretation of anatomy and facial structure. Felicia or CF Villa or Via, I don't know how to pronounce your name. I'm very sorry. I don't know how to pronounce your names, artists. It just doesn't work because the faces don't make that artistic style conform to that kind of coloring. And it's a problem. It's a problem that Travel Foreman had when he started off the book in the first 5 or 6 issues. I think it was just the first 5. But Foreman's art is heavily stylized, and so Reber's colors don't work as well as they would in, like, I guess a Giuseppe Camuncoli title or a David Marquez book. In fact, I don't like Brian Reber's colors in general. I think that his colors really screwed up Venom. And that's just a problem that started to compound with a lot of the story beats that I was having trouble, you know, tolerating in Venom. And this isn't a deal breaker for me, by the way. Black Cat has enough story and artistic merit that Reber's coloring and the lettering issues, they're fairly minor in the grand scheme of things. But these are problems that should be recognized so that they can be rectified. That's the difference. And I'm not saying this just to be a meanie bobini to Brian Reber or whoever does the lettering for this book. I can't find it. God damn it. Okay. But this book is like an A minus title. It's arguably one of the best books on the stands at Marvel right now. It's a little upsetting that it's in the middle of a tie-in, so it's gonna be kind of shot in the foot on its way out because people assume, oh, it's just over with King in Black. But no, we have at least 5 more issues because they recently confirmed that she's gonna do like an Infinity Gauntlet story in Black Cat #8, which I believe is in July. So I'm looking forward to reading that. I'm honestly kind of jealous of Javi because he managed to get a really good book to review, and I'm probably not gonna get. I've only got 1 more issue of Sword left. So yeah. So let's move on from Black Cat to Iron Man, written by Chris Cantwell, art by Cafu, and colors by Frank Darmada. This is the book I've got like the most love-hate relationship with in the world, because there's some really solid stuff here. I like the dynamic between Tony and Patsy. I love the like use of C-list nobody heroes. Scarlet Spider's in here, and he's not like a nobody, but like, you know, relative to his older brother's success. Ben Reilly is on like the C tier list. He's not like someone you'd call the Avengers. I'm sorry, Zach. I know you're watching this probably, and you're frothing at the mouth with rage. But Frogman and Gargoyle, I wouldn't call, you know, A-listers. It's a great use of those lower tier characters. I also like the idea of Tony being stuck in the armor again. His neck is permanently stuck. He's permanently stuck in the armor because it's essentially like an emergency medical unit. He can't move his head without dying. It's a neat idea. Unfortunately, also Kafu's art shines. It was amazing to see Kafu's rendering of the War Machine armor, and I'm glad we're going to see more of it. That said, this book is like B- right now, and I'm going to tell you why. Because Cantwell has a serious pacing problem. It wasn't as prevalent in Doctor Doom because Doctor Doom had at least something of a set end. Like, he had an idea of what he wanted to do at the end. Iron Man has kind of gotten really decompressed. This pacing problem showed up first in issue 3. Issues 1 and 2, I loved those. Those were great issues. The problem is that Iron Man #6 is not only sending Tony into a completely, you know, fish out of water environment, he's going into space, but it felt like we skipped. It felt like we both skipped 3 or 4 issues, and then also we needed another 2 or 3 more to get to this point. And I know that's not like a realistic standard to get to, but it feels like. It feels like it's got the car in neutral with one cinder block on the gas and the other on the brakes. It just feels like it's very schizophrenic in terms of where it wants to go and how fast. I do like the character moments. Like I said, I like the dynamic between Tony and Hellcat, and I also like the dynamics of, like, you know, the lower tier characters along with Korvac's entourage. It just feels like, man, there's something wrong with it. Not to mention that Frank Darmot. I know I keep dumping on colorists, guys, but they're an essential part of making these kinds of books work. I have insisted before that Marvel should at least publish some books in black and white. Dedicate the colorists to the main stuff so that the workload can be more evenly spread out, and let some books be put in black and white. Black Cat is a book that could easily be put in black and white. Maybe X-Men could be put in black and white. I don't know. But it feels like they're putting their colorists on good books, but it feels like they're not spreading them out appropriately. And Frank Darmada is one of my least favorite colorists in Marvel's stable right now. He's up there with Brian Reber. One of my least favorite colorists. I gotta say it. It's driving me nuts. Maybe put Delgado on this book. Now that we're going into space, Darmada's going to be way, way out of his element in terms of like what will work for coloring. Because even if I don't really like Darmada's coloring, I can at least understand what they're going for. Like, you know, the gritty, down to earth, street level Iron Man book. and on an aesthetic level, I can appreciate it, even if I don't think it's executed particularly well. But in a book that's like really hyping up, we're going to space, guys! We're going to space! This isn't a book that Darmada feels suited for. There's an issue of the Carla Pacino Spider-Woman, and Darmada's blowing it on that too. He's fucking that book up too. And in a book with it, and there's an issue where Spider-Woman and Captain Marvel go to space, and I gotta say that's where the book suffered. That's where the book really took a clunker. Not that the book wasn't particularly great as it was, but that book felt like it had the colorist at least worked. But when you go to space, Darmada's like, gritty, realistic colors don't work in space. So hopefully, when they actually go to space, there is either an adjustment on the colorist, or Darmada can severely swap up his palette to something a bit brighter and more whimsical. I gotta say though, part of the problem I've had, I know a lot of people have had this problem with Hellcat, is that she's mainly there, and I hate to say she's the mouthpiece, because a lot of people will say like, oh, the SJW agenda, she's woke. I could care less about that. My problem is that is less about her being like, the what people kind of just say, oh, Kate Leth fucked over the character completely. And to an extent, yeah, Kate Leth fucked her up, but I think that the character can be salvaged out of that into something a bit better as a foil. And while Patsy is great as a foil, the problem is that sometimes Cantwell's foil turns into Cantwell's manifesto, which is Cantwell just forgets that he's writing the character and instead just says what he wants to say. Like, these are the themes of the book. I'm gonna have Hellcat just spell them out for the reader, and that never works out well. I don't know, and with issue 8, we're essentially getting an entire issue dedicated to her, along with Moondragon. Yet another character that, like, Moondragon works, but it feels like we're bringing in yet another character that really doesn't need to be here. Now, you can say it about like Scarlet Spider or Gargoyle, but I don't know, it just feels like at this point we're pulling in whoever we can. Oh, and Misty Knight. I keep forgetting that Misty Knight is here, which sucks because she's actually an enjoyable foil for Tony alongside Hellcat. But I don't know, just having a whole issue dedicated to Patsy along with an artistic change, and while I don't dislike Juan Cabal because I love him on Guardians, it feels like there's too much changing and too much focusing on a completely different character. It's the Slott Amazing Spider-Man problem where Slott would deviate the focus away from Peter and onto a completely different side character. This happened with Silk in the original Sin arc. This happened with Mockingbird in the Parker Industries era. And it happened with Spock for an entire series. So I don't want to... I hesitate to call Cantwell the new Dan Slott, because Cantwell, on a technical writing level, is far and away infinitely better than Slott's Iron Man. We're looking at the last 3 writers, Gillen, Bendis, and Slott. Cantwell is miles away better than all 3 of them probably put together. But Cantwell has some serious problems with his with his pacing and with letting the mask slip when it comes to his characters saying, oh, I'm the mouthpiece now. And those problems will continue to compound until they become hard to ignore. And so far, those problems have been easy for me to ignore because they're not as prevalent. But when we get to the point where the artist is changing and a secondary protagonist is getting an entire issue dedicated to themselves, that's when everything is kind of becoming a problem, and I can't overlook that anymore. So we'll give this one a B minus, and the next issue could very well retroactively change that. I don't think it will. We are getting a skip month in May for Heroes Reborn. Just letting you guys know that. So in May there will be no Iron Man review. I assume once Heroes Reborn ends, because Iron Man's in that storyline, that we will get another issue after this one. If not, I'll be seriously disappointed, because I have to skip a book that I've been reading consistently for 2 months in a row, and that will piss me off. So, anyways, let's talk about X-Men. So way back when in issue 5, sorry, my eyes were weird. So way back in issue 5, a strike team consisting of Wolverine / X-23, Darwin, and Synch all went into the vault that the Children of the Vault came out of in I believe in Mike Casey's X-Men, in Mike Carey's X-Men. I think my X-Men history beyond, like, you know, the big moments is fairly vague. So you'll forgive me if I don't remember the exact details. I believe it's Mike Carey. I could be wrong. I'll freely admit to that. But that was 13 issues ago, and about a year in terms of how long it took to get there. So now that X of Swords is over, and we've had the Brett Booth controversy aside, it's time to get back to that plot point. So on the first note, this feels very much more like your standard Hickman issue. You know, less data pages, more focus on this specific part of the team rather than, you know, the broader Krakoan infrastructure, if that makes sense. You know, it takes place, I believe, from Darwin's perspective, or Synch. I think that's Synch. Oh, jeez. I think, yeah, that's Synch. Yeah, it's not necessarily obscure characters, but good ones. I really don't have a whole lot to say about this issue. Mainly, I like the fact that Hickman's calling back to his older works, like the city from the Maker, like the Maker's City, which I believe is based off of Carey's X-Men. So, good callbacks to that. It feels like Hickman's leaning more into the stuff that makes him shine, and that's a good thing. Like, we're going back to the interesting stuff of the X-Men. I wasn't a huge fan of, like, X of Swords. I was kind of tired of, like, the deviation to the Brood and, like, Empire tie-ins and X of Swords. Now it feels like we're finally getting back to the interesting stuff. You know, I'm fine with deviating for a little bit. I honestly feel like X-Men has kind of suffered without Pepe Larraz or R.B. Silva. R.B. Silva doesn't deserve to be on Fantastic Four. He's too good for that book. I'm gonna be honest. He's way too good for that. So, and I don't know what Pepe Larraz is doing. I'm assuming he's doing X-Men still. I know he's doing Black Cat covers, but Black Cat covers can't consume someone's lifestyle, especially because he was instrumental in making Krakoa's visual design. So I hope he comes back soon. I don't know if I like the fill-in artist for the Nimrod issue. But Hickman's definitely getting back into the strong stuff, like the economics of Krakoa, the team dynamic. I'm assuming that once the Hellfire Gala starts, it'll be past this Nimrod arc that's coming up. Yeah, I'd give this a solid B+. I know I'm chickening out, and that I'm not going too much into detail about it, but that's what I gotta say about it. It's not. There's not a whole lot to it. It is a good thing and a bad thing. You know, solid character dynamics, and solid use of X-Men's existing infrastructure to make something new, and expand upon it using Hickman's visual language. So that's all the Marvel books. So we're gonna take a short 5-minute break, and then we're going to talk about Radiant Black. I'm gonna get some water. I'm gonna, I'm gonna clean up around here. Just, give my pipes time to rest, and then we'll talk about Radiant Black. This is what I'll talk about. Homesick Pilots. This is a great book, and I want to talk about it. I just got it a really bad. It skipped my mind when I pitched it, and I don't have my notes in front of me, or like gathered thoughts. So, like in a couple of weeks when the next issue launches, I'm guessing calendar wise, we'll talk about. I don't know what comes out by the 13th. Let me check my. I got my spreadsheet in front of me, so it's more I can say for my time on satellites. So we'll put on the week of the 19th, or on the week of the 20th. That's when we'll do the next show in about 3 weeks. Yeah, so when we have enough books to fill a show slot. But I do want to talk about this book a bit, and I might talk about it in trade format. I have no clue, but I really like this book and I want to talk about it. So we'll take a 5-minute break, come back at around 8:45 my time, and we'll figure it out from there. All right, I'll be back. And we're back. Okay, sorry. I had my mic on mute real quick. So let's talk about Radiant Black real quick. I'm going back. I promise we're not talking about homesick pilots until next time. So this is a weird book. Not necessarily in terms of content, but like it's marketing. So first thing I want to say is I love the graphic design used here in this book. It's not visible here, but in terms of design language, this book is very similar. It's House of X, Powers of 10 really popularized like the data page format, like all the technical little computer bits. It's a visual design language I love, and this book kind of replicates that style very well, while also being fairly unique. Gillen's Eternals did something similar. The difference is that it had too much light blue contrasting against black. It felt kind of like Tron Legacy. This book has blue in the background, but it uses white on black, which is a very much appreciated visual design language on my end. This book, I believe during its marketing, they kind of Image, and as well as a lot of Higgins contemporaries. Kyle Higgins is the guy that wrote this book. Marcelo Costa drew the art with I think Becca Carey. I'm sorry, Becca Carey, wherever you are. I'm sorry, I mispronounced your name. You're not the only one I've done tonight, but I hope you'll forgive me. But Robert Kirkman, as well as like a bunch of go away notifications. Okay, so as I was saying, Kirkman and a lot of Higgins contemporaries kind of framed this as the next Invincible. They make a reference to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and in the book there's an ad, I believe, in the same universe for a book that leans a lot more heavily on the Sentai franchise. Oh my god, my brain just like died for a minute there. But that leans a lot more on the Sentai brand, whereas this book, they really pushed as like Image's next Invincible, in terms of like, the superhero book that will spawn a completely new universe. While I like the book, you're really pushing the this is going to be the next big thing a little too hard. I don't know if it has the potential to spawn an entirely new universe out of it. I'll see the projects and see where they go. I love me a cape book, especially a creator-owned cape book. I just don't think that this universe is particularly the one to do it. So the basic premise is that this guy, Nathan Burnett, has just turned 30, and he moves in back with his parents after he's like 30,000 or 38,000 in credit card debt. So this book moves very slowly. Like, they make a point. They say like, oh, he discovers this new Radiant thing. The problem is that a lot of the stuff in this solicit is a fucking lie. It never happens. They only show like a bit of him. They only show him getting the suit, doing like the classic like heroes practicing their powers kind of thing by accident, and then the equivalent of Venom fucking robbing a bank. That's what the book mostly revolves around. The majority of the book revolves around like this part right here, where it focuses a lot more on the character Dylan or Nathan. Sorry, why did I say Dylan? I'm thinking of Dylan from King in Black. God damn it. But they take the Peter Parker, 20-year-old lovable loser kind of trope that Slots Run kind of popularized, and try to cram it into the framework of like an Invincible style superhero universe. And in some ways that works. You feel a lot worse for him because he's kind of an affable loser. He's a likable guy, but like he's terrible at deadlines. He's only got like a few short stories to his name. And he's 30. So like at this point in people's lives, usually people in my generation are expected to have our shit together by the time we're 25. Now, granted, with the pandemic, things have drastically changed in terms of like How will people with 20,000 in student loans manage to get their shit together before they're 30? The trick question, you can't. Um, but I do appreciate that, like, it makes you feel bad. It makes you pity this guy because he is a genuinely good person, but it doesn't have that, like, whimsy of, like, fucking Mark Grayson getting his powers and trying to live up to the legacy of his dad. Now, granted, that's the origin story of Invincible, and that doesn't necessarily... You can't just copy-paste that to make a new book, but, you got a likable protagonist here. I genuinely do think you have a likable guy as your main character. The main problem is there's not a whole lot to his name right now in terms of, like, what his personality is or how he bounces off other characters. He's only had, like, big communication with one character, and that's his best friend. I forgot the friend's name, so I've come to call him Jughead because that's the closest thing that he looks like. That's the closest person that I can think of is fucking Jughead from the Archie comics. I'm not sure what that says about me, but whether or not he meant to, Marcelo Costa made him fucking Jughead. So make of that what you will. Now, I should point out Marcelo Costa does a really good job with interior art here. It feels like, Ryan Ottley light in a good way. The lettering is I made a big deal out of lettering in Black Cat, and I think that, in a creator-owned, there's a lot more moving parts, and it's not just, like, by committee. So I'm glad that they really got their act together on the lettering in this bit. I haven't seen enough of the colors to say whether or not I really like them or not, but it feels like, that the environments are like flats, and the people, they have a bit more, gradient to them. Some of it's kind of weird. Like this weird painted bit. I'm not sure if it's, like, meant to be that way. I think this has potential. I'll probably get the first paperback in trade, or the first trade in paperback, depending on how long it goes. I'll probably pick up the Sentai book. But yeah, as far as Image books go, I think they really want another Invincible, especially because Image doesn't really have, like, a big seller right now. Walking Dead's over, Invincible's over. Apparently, I think it sells really well in paperbacks, though, like in collections. Saga's on infinite hiatus for reasons that I have yet to discern. And, like, the books they really want to be, like, their headliners, like Donny Cates' crossover, I'm just not feeling those. Like, Commanders in Crisis, I have no idea what that's supposed to be other than minority superheroes, but that's, like, it's unfortunately a miss in Steve Orlando's hit or miss style of writing. I have no idea what Deep Beyond is, but I think that looks pretty neat. I might check that out. It's Mirka Andolfo. So, it's only 12 issues, though. I think what they want is they want a new ongoing, and Invincible was really popular, and so they got the Ultraman guy. Well, they didn't get him. This is, like, creator-owned pitch shit. I don't know what goes on behind the scenes at Image. I'm gonna be honest, I don't. And they really want this to be, like, their next hotcakes. I think this is more along the lines of, like, hey, down on his luck superhero fights Venom. So it's kind of just like, he's kind of new Peter Parker. Whether or not that's a good thing is up to you. Personally, I think it's great because it kind of plays up the Peter Parker, lovable loser, because Peter Parker isn't really a loser, but that's the image people have of him, thanks to Slott. Thank you, Slott. I do enjoy the costume design, though. I wish I could show more pages without, spoilers, or without using a site that isn't Comixology. But I feel like this has the promise to be, like, a genuinely good ongoing. It's not going to be like a Hickman seller like Decorum or East of West, but it's got promise as a ship of the line cape book. And that's the best price I can give. I think this is probably one of the better books on their roster, and that's not getting any push whatsoever. They really want this to be their headliner, and whether or not it can be, I don't know. We've only read one issue, and I'm not even sure when the next issue comes out. Does it come out next? It comes out on the 17th. So when I do my show on the 17th, well, figure it out from there. I do have to say, though, I don't really care for the villain. It's going to be just Venom, but with gravity powers. I do like this guy. He's basically like a slicker Gravity from Marvel, with like a Spider-Man style backstory. And that's a pretty good premise. You know, gravity powers, you know, flying. You got a solid lineup there. It's not like, you know, conventional Superman where he fucking flies and shoots lasers out of his eyes and shit. But you got some potential for some pretty innovative fight scenes. Whether or not they'll actually do those fight scenes or just stick to like, I fly and punch shit, woo, bam. That's completely to be determined. But, you know, we've got a solid foundation here for some genuinely good stuff. Especially if they show him either completely fail or genuinely succeed. I'm for either one. I don't have a avenue to fight with on that. But as far as Image books go, solid start. This is the book I wanted to talk about. I don't have a whole lot to say on it because I've talked about it a bit in other times. But essentially, it's what if we took like the legends of like of King Arthur and shit and made them real life, with an old lady grandma with a shotgun and ginger. I don't want to say loser, but like, you know, socially anxious schmuck. And they're all likable characters, mind you. My one complaint is that this guy's girlfriend, Rose, doesn't really do a whole lot in the first trade. She's mostly kind of just along for the ride and she barely has a presence in like the first 2 or 3 issues. She only has a genuine addition to the plot in issue 4, and even then she's kind of just there. I will talk about Volume 2 at a later date, but you know, as far as action books go, this feels like right up Dan Mora's alley. I think it helps that he got a creator-owned book so he can flex his muscles and show what he can really do. I love the way that he portrays like these ancient I forgot the name, the Anglo-Saxon tales of yore. I don't know. It's been a while since I took 10th grade English. This is when I would have taken. That's when I took it in high school. So. I will say though, I think the unsung MVP of this book is Tamara Bonvillain. Now I know I've got those of you in my audience who don't like Tamara Bonvillain's, you know, political tweets on Twitter or shit, but you gotta admit, she does a great job at coloring. She gives the book a very strong atmosphere. I love the way she portrays the Anglo-Saxon legends, particularly when they get into Otherworld. I don't want to say a whole lot about this book because I want you to go buy it yourself. I have it in paperback. It's not here, but I have it at home. And it's one of it feels good to hold in your hand. It's like it helps that this is Boom, so they have a better handle on the trades, like the standard paperbacks, than like Marvel and DC do, especially DC. But that's neither here nor there. I do think that fucking Bridget, that's the grandma's name, and Duncan have a stronger relationship. But other than like the love interest, and I like the love interest Rose later on down the line. It's just that in this particular trade, she doesn't do a whole lot, so there's not a whole lot to expand upon with her character. She's much more fleshed out in the second volume, but the main interpersonal relationship is between Bridget and Duncan, and they have a very strong, like, you know, Duncan is physically competent, but he's a social wallflower / klutz. Who is in way over his head, and grandma is like, you know, she's frail, but she's got the experience and, you know, the grit, the emotional and psychological grit to handle the threats that they're up against. I do wish they had gone into other threats aside from just the ones that were relevant to the story arc. But I have this. I ordered the second paperback. I do wish that I had gotten it cheaper in stock, but I do have that one ordered. It's on the way to either my house or here, where I'm living now for school. But this is the book that this is one of my favorite ongoings right now. I hope it gets more than 3 trades, because we have 18 issues confirmed, and I'm not sure if they're going to go further than that. But because Dan Mora is doing Detective Comics with Mariko Tamaki, I'm not sure what the status on that is. I just hope that it... oh, did the new issue come? Hell yeah! Oh wait, I did read this. Did I read this one? I don't remember. But yeah, like, buy this book, guys. This is like some genuinely great, like fantasy leaking into the real world stuff. Like, we've got like that Who Framed Roger Rabbit? It's sort of like that, but with like Anglo-Saxon mythology. I think I'm gonna make it an effort to find like one new Image book to review, and it's probably gonna be Homesick Pilots or Deep Beyond, and then I kind of want to go and try and find some more Boom trades. I think next show we're gonna talk about We Only Find Them When They're Dead, which is the current book by Al Ewing and Simone DeMeo. But when that comes out in paperback, I'll talk about it then. It's not that I don't want to talk about it now, but I feel like this is a book that you kind of have to have the trade to talk about. And that's how I feel comfortable talking about it, if that makes sense. And I know that I didn't talk about any DC tonight, but those are... Chris and I talk about Future State on his channel, and we're going into Infinite Frontier next week, I think. So we're saving the Marvel stuff and the other publisher stuff for this stream, because that's when I get more time to talk. But yeah, pick this one up. Genuinely, pick up most of what I've suggested tonight. The only one I would suggest not picking up is Guardians of the... Even I would say pick up Guardians of the Galaxy. It's just you need to pick up the rest of Guardians of the Galaxy to really get Guardians of the Galaxy number 11. So if anyone has any suggestions, let me know for future episodes. Or who would you like me to talk to? Who would you like me to... What book would you like me to talk about? Also, this book is an A+. I give it an A+. I would give Radiant Black like a B+. I genuinely do want to talk about more books. I might talk about Transformers, I might go talking about the new series or More Than Meets the Eye, or something else. I do want to cover more publishers. I don't want to just be the Marvel shill. That feels somewhat reductive considering how wide and expansive the industry is. But yeah, I think that's gonna be it for tonight. I think Monday we're doing Dungeons and Dragons. And then Tuesday is Chris's stream where we talk about Infinite Frontier. Thursday is going to be Destiny again. Now that we have the technical know-how to start the stream, we're going to hopefully get off the ground faster than we did last time. So, yay us. And then Friday, I have no idea what I'm doing on Fridays, but Saturdays at 8 is the new time slot for Bogenrieder Variety Hour. This is when you're going to want to tune in from now on. So with that said, I hope you have a good night. This was a solid month. This was a solid month for comics. Hopefully there will be more by the time the 17th comes around. So yeah, have a good night, y'all. See ya.